It's 10 a.m. We're supposed to start right now. We'll just give about 2 more minutes for people to join in. So hang around for 2 more minutes and then we'll start up. Thank you. We've seen is if you're unorganized, you actually have a huge list of jobs sitting on your dashboard. And if you're organized, you have sets of views that separate one kind of jobs from others. And we've seen installations where the views kind of just span horizontally and keep going on for pages and pages and pages. Now, that's a good way to start, but the problem here is the jobs are not namespace aware. So if you have job A in view A, you cannot have job B in view B, and that's at the bottom of it. I think views are not meant to be sort of used purely to organize jobs. So we kind of went ahead and built folders, and they're just like your operating system folders. They're namespace aware, so you can now go ahead and create a folder for project A and have all the jobs for project A within that folder, and this folder can sit within a folder for say department A. Right. So now we thought this was so important that we actually ended up giving this away for free. So if you actually are facing issues with organizing jobs, I would highly recommend just downloading this folders plugin from the CloudBees plugin gateway on the Jenkins Update Center. And again, the power of this is sort of in its simplicity, and I'll let Kosuke just quickly demo this so you have a picture of how it looks like.
Right. So, as Harpreet said, the views and folders are a bit different. So, for one, when jobs are in views, well, they don't really belong to views. They just happen to be shown in a given view. Whereas in folders, it's like it's usually like a file in the directory. So the job would belong to a folder, and then so that allows you to do things like access control based on this folder, and then everything in it would inherit things. So so here I got the Jenkins instance running. So what I'm going to do is to create a folder for one team. So inside a folder, it's basically just like a view configuration, so you can choose what you want to display, things like that. And then you can add jobs in this folder. So I'm going to create, let's say, build job, which is a freestyle job. And when it's finished loading, maybe I can create a second job that is used for testing. So, it's very common that any single project or a branch would need multiple jobs to do the job. So let's say if you got 2 of those guys, and maybe I can make the build trigger the test job at let's see, where is it, build other project, and then let's build the test job. Yeah. So now I have a folder with 2 jobs, and then because the jobs in the folder are sort of namespace, it has only its namespace. So I can create another folder, and in fact, I can copy everything in this earlier. Oops, let me scroll down a little bit. So I can copy the entire folder, including all the jobs in it. And then so they'll also keep the relationships intact. So if I look at the build jobs, you'll see that it's sort of downstreamed to the test job inside the folder team B, not in team A. So you get to capture the relationships and very easily copy things around. So yeah, that's very quickly, that's what the folders do.
Cool. So once you've sort of set your jobs up and you've organized the job, the next set of things that people usually tend to look at is sort of how do you secure your jobs, right? Now the advantage with sort of folders, and I'm going to get into our RBAC plugin, is that you can now actually set up security on folders. So you can say my project A has a certain set of roles and groups. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. So let's look at what does it mean to secure your Jenkins installations and your Jenkins job, right? So the first step with security is really setting up the right authentication, and this really starts off with your machine level things, right? You set up your Jenkins server on a particular server. You have to make sure that the firewall, the OS, the patches, all that has been set up right. And this itself is a huge topic and clearly out of scope for this talk. Once you've sort of set that up, the second part is setting up authentication for Jenkins itself. So which underlying authentication provider is Jenkins using? And there are a number of ones within Jenkins itself. And this need is, again, primarily driven by your IT department, right? So again, setting up authentication, what you need to do, which plugins you need, is again out of scope for this talk. And we've done an entire webinar in the past you can find out on our resources section, which really talks about authentication and authorization. So the next part is, once you've set this up, is authorization, right? And the way Jenkins works is, once you've set up authentication, there are extension points for authorization, and Jenkins uses those authorization points to decide who can access what, right? And by default, your installation is unsecure, and then you kind of go about adding authorization points on top. And there are a number of plugins again in the authorization area. And I would, for people interested in this, I would urge you to go and look at that webinar on our resources page, which really delves deep into it. So for the purpose of this talk, we've sort of focused on our CloudBees RBAC plugin. And the way we went about making this is we looked around at other plugins out there, and we felt there was a shortage in terms of the feature set we thought that people needed in the enterprise, and we've gone ahead and filled those in. So at a very simple level, it's a very simple matrix of click boxes. So there's roles and there are groups, and so users can belong to groups and roles can have groups, and you can assign permissions based on these roles. And the beauty of it is that let's say you set up a folder, as I mentioned earlier, you have permissions set up on the top level of the folder, and say for Department A, and then you create project A and project B underneath, you can have permissions set up differently for these two, right? And this really works well in areas where you really want to separate projects by departments, or have secret projects within your organization. And the other interesting thing here is you can filter roles out at any level. So if at the top level you say, developers and QA can access all the jobs within this folder, you can actually go down and within a project say, well, QA is not allowed access to any jobs here from on this folder underneath. So you can do very sophisticated setups with this plugin. Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing that's really nice about this is that internally we took the same the secret sauce in Jenkins studies, the extensibility into this. So when we say RBAC has a folder support, it's not that the RBAC has a baked-in knowledge of folders. It actually has this extensible model about this hierarchy of objects that need access controlled, and the folder just happened to implement one of those. So this allowed us to sort of extend this notion of RBAC beyond what we basically currently have. So I guess Harpreet kind of went into a bit of it, but I guess we wanted to show this in demo. So so here what I'm going to do is first, so there are a number of benefits in RBAC, but one of the things that I can show is that it first lets you create roles, which is basically a group of permissions. So here I've defined the developer role based on the permissions that's needed for the people who is using Jenkins. So I guess that configuration comes to the system configuration screen. So instead of clicking this large row of checkbox in every developer, you can set them up first and only once as a role, and then depending on where you are, wait, where is it? No, I'm sorry. It's a separate page. So depending on which part of the hierarchy you are, you can define different users and groups that has these roles. So this is where roles are defined. Another thing that the RBAC does really well is sort of, the tie security to folders, and then also create this what we call that subtractive permission. So in many places, you want to run Jenkins mostly in open fashion so that everyone can access most part of it, except that there is a small portion that you want to hide out. It's rarely the other way around. So as a demo, let me create a new secret project which represents this skunkworks project that's not yet supposed to be publicly visible. So what I can do is I create a new folder, which I'm going to use as a basis for access control. And then in this folder, I'm going to define the roles that basically says the anonymous visibility and then also visibility granted to every authenticated user is not automatically inherited into this folder. I'm going to grant the admin roles to inherit into this so that I won't lose access to it. But by setting this up, the secret project is no longer visible to those who has otherwise access to the top level. And instead, what I'm going to do is to create the groups that's local to this folder, which is another thing that's nice about the RBAC, which is that often your user information comes from your corporate, the identity database like LDAP or Active Directory, but the people who's managing those is not going to let you create the small groups that you need for things like your component team or the QA guys. So in the RBAC, you can combine both of the best of the both worlds. You can use the groups and the users defined in the corporate database and then use them as is, but you can also create groups locally inside Jenkins at arbitrary folder to meet your needs. So we're going to say skunkworks, developers, and then this group controls the developer access in this folder. Maybe, well, let's actually make the admin in this folder so that the people in the skunkworks project can do whatever they want to do inside this folder, right? And then I am going to add a few users, let's say Alice, into this. Yeah, so what happens is now if I switch to another browser, and then let me first try to log in as Bob, so that you see that the Bob doesn't see the secret project folder, but if I log out back again and then try to log in as Alice, then you see that because Alice is added to the skunkworks project, she has the access to the secret project. And then she's the administrator inside the secret project, so she can mess with the creating other groups, adding more people into the groups, or the create jobs and everything else that's allowed, everything else the administrator is allowed on this folder. So that's, I guess, one of the few things we can do with RBAC.
So if somebody has external groups that's provided by their authentication provider, does this work with that?
Yeah. So we can let you use, if the corporate database does define some useful groups, you can use them as a part of the definition. You can combine those with the internal groups. You can take those groups defined in that corporate database and then assign roles to it, whatever have you.
Nice. All right. So, well, once you've sort of secured your jobs and you've secured your Jenkins instance, the next set of problems usually come in is replicating good practices and responding to requests quicker. Right. And the thing that we've built here, and I'm personally very stoked about this, is templates. And the idea here with templates is that we talk in the user's domain-specific language. And by that, what we mean is, if you're a Jenkins administrator, and this will become clear in the demo that Kosuke gives, and you ask your users to set up a job for their environment, what they're looking at is this huge configuration screen from Jenkins itself in terms of setting up the job, and people usually end up making mistakes there. So it's really talking in the user's domain-specific language and shielding them from from these kinds of mistakes.
Right. So the flexibility in Jenkins is both a blessing and curse. That's what lets you do anything you want, but at the same time, for average users in your organization, there are just too many things that they can edit, and the things that they need to edit just doesn't stand out enough. So that's often the pain I see in the large organizations. So we're trying to fix that with templates.
All right. The next set of things, and this is really where this shines, is to capture sameness of jobs, right? So there are a lot of projects that differ only by certain small things, and these are created, and
very similar way. So we have a template that defines how the plugins.
You don't have it ever, but it captures a good enough set of things that you can do with templates without having to actually code plugins. So there are 4 types of templates, and these sit on top of each other, although I haven't listed it in that manner. So the builder template actually goes in, and you see things showing in the add build step part of your build. The job template is just templatizing the job, and the folder template builds on top of it and templatizes the whole folder. Whereas the auxiliary template is sort of a means to, I would think of these as variables within a class, which helps you sort of set certain parameters that can be used by other templates. Now, it's much more easier to actually show you than talk about this. So Kosuke is going to start off with the builder template and show you.
Right. So here, what I'm going to do is, let's say we're working on building an appliance, the electronics or something like that, and then we're shipping that around the world. So the first thing we're going to do is to create the build process that captures what happens in building those appliances. So we're going to do the HCME Corp appliance build process, and then that's the builder template. So when we define a template, what we do is, well, we first ask ourselves, what is it that the users are supposed to see and then type? So in this case, let's define, and then we're going to define those as attributes. So first, we're going to define a name of this appliance. And we also define how the user is supposed to type this in. So the name will be a text field, so that's fine. So I type in the name of the appliance we are building or something like that. And then maybe just to make it a bit more interesting, let's say we are doing the export control. And so this one, let's say, is a checkbox. So as you can see, we have a large number of UI options that let you define really complicated things if necessary. Check if this appliance is ships internationally or whatever. And then, so now that we define those attributes, we're going to define the actual build process by using those. So right now for this, let's say we are building name, and we are just going to sleep for a few seconds. And then, so we have embedded Groovy template. We are using embedded Groovy template here, so we can bring on the full programmable scripting power of the Groovy. So we would say if we require export control, checking export control approval, something like that, and close the bracket. And I think that's it. So now that we define the template, what's going to happen is, if you're building the oven, and then choose the freestyle project, when we are configuring the build step, this guy is going to show up among all the other typical options. So here it is. So that's what Harpreet meant when this is, in a way, a Pureman's plugin, because you can do some of the things that the plugin can do in this fashion. So we are building oven, and then let's say this guy requires export control. So with that set up, if you do the build, they will build like you expect. So we are checking so you're building it. So it runs the script that you defined, you as the build engineer has defined, and then you saw that they did the right thing. So that was, I guess, one of the simpler templates to create. But we can actually take this one step up and then create the whole, the entire job into a template. So let's say, so for this, we need to look into this XML definitions. So that's what defines a job as a job. And I'm going to create a new template that captures the entire job. So we would say ACME Corp Appliance Build Project. And then this time I'm going to select the job template. Well, job always has a name, so it's already there. And then I'm going to add the export control flag. And then I guess that's a checkbox. And then this time, we're going to define this in terms of a Groovy template that generates XML. And then so I basically did the programming by example. We already had this one job that configured to our liking, so we use that as a basis. And then where necessary, we replace the actual value by the variable. So so I think that's the only two places in this case. So this example is a bit interesting because we're using builder template inside a job template. So it's a template nesting inside template. So now that we created this job template, and I guess I forgot to configure one thing. This is our standard appliance build process. So I added just a description so that it will be easier to discover. So now we can create a new job, and then among all these familiar choices, you see this ACME Corp Appliance Build Project. So let's say we are now building toaster, and then so now you see the real power of this, the domain specificness in it. That is, all these potentially confusing fields are gone, and it only shows you what needs to be shown. But so even though the configuration field screen is very small, internally it's the full power of the full flexibility of the freestyle job. So when you do the build, it runs the build process. If the notification is configured, it does the right thing. So in the environment where you have a reasonable naming convention, let's say, so that the repositories are placed in certain locations, the mailing list is named according to the name of the components and stuff like that, then you can use that to drastically cut down the amount of configuration you have to make. And because this is a template, not a wizard to create things, what we can do is, after those templates are used, we can go back to the definition of it, and then we can change them. So we can add a new fields and so on. But if we just wanted to tweak the process, so let's say we'd be adding like a privacy policy conformance check or something. So let's say tomorrow they wanted to do find bugs, things like that. So we just need to edit the template, and then we don't have to reconfigure the job. So we can go back to, let's say, oven, and then do the build. I guess the toaster will be more interesting because I think that's a job template, right? So we can redo the build of a toaster, and then it's going to pick up the changes we made in the build process. So now it's doing the privacy policy conformance check. So that's what makes this a template, not a wizard. And I think that's all I wanted to show here.
Yeah, so I remember this funny thing with this prominent community member. I'm sure you know him. He was telling me that he really does not need templates, and then a week later he came back and said like, oh, I just spent my last 3 days configuring 10 jobs for 10 different things that differed only by a small thing, and he expected these to change again. So he was like, can I have the templates plug in there? So that's fairly useful. All right, so moving on, the next set, you've now started responding quicker to projects coming on board or whatnot. The next feature is sort of looking in sort of compliance, and to me, the funny thing here is this usually comes in like at moments, and they happen a week before release. And this is how I've seen it work out. The tester comes in and says your stuff does not work, and the developer says, well, I tested this against and it works. And the tester will come in and say, well, no, not with full version 1.4, and the developer will say, Well, but I tested this with 1.3, and the test guy will bring up the spec and say, well, this is what the organization committed to, and that's usually the moment, and this is how the developer looks at that point, right? So here you are. There is, the fact of life is, with 500 plus plugins and with so many binaries and so many platforms, this is bound to happen, and a lot of this is now done manually, right? Somebody is taking care to ensure that this stuff, there's a matrix somewhere within the organization that tracks of this, right? So what this plugin does is it allows you to take your Jenkins instance and set it up as an update center, or you could take Jenkins itself and set up a special update center. You host your plugin binaries there, or JDK binaries, all can be hosted there, and it inherits from other update centers, so you can sort of set up a complicated inheritance model if you want to, and specify the versions of binaries that are available to downstream Jenkins instances. So this instance now starts becoming the update center for other plugins, right?
Right. Yeah. So in my mind, it actually have two somewhat distinctive use case. One is that in places where your organization deploys multiple Jenkins instances, often managed by the local administrator, and then there's you're the guy sitting in the middle, center, helping those individual teams. You sometimes want to control what they see in their Jenkins instances. Like you notice that one of the versions of the plugin is having problem in your environment, and then you say you don't want the rest of the rest of your organization to see them. So it will help you reduce the amount of support overhead you have. The other use case is that in those places, people often develop their private in-house custom plugins, and they need a means to distribute those plugins inside the organization. So this custom update center allows you to host your own private plugins, and then the Jenkins instances running inside the organization would see those plugins just like the OSS plugin that they see from the update center. So that's the two things. And I guess let me show that quickly to you. So So to use this, you have to create. So let's pretend that this Jenkins Enterprise instance is this corporate central Jenkins instance. So it's the mother of all Jenkins, or the father of all Jenkins, I guess. So we are going to create the ACME Corp internal update center, and then we're going to choose the update center as created the item type in it. And so, so let's use a self-signed certificate and then stuff like that. And so here in this demo, I'm going to show you how you can host your private plugins. So to upload, so what we can do is to manually upload a plugin from my local file system, and then it gets uploaded. And then what I'm going to do is to mark this plugin as promoted, meaning it's published for the consumption of the rest of the users. So this allows us to have multiple versions of plugin, try a new version, roll it back to earlier version, stuff like that. I can do also so I can automatically make the latest version available. I can define the upstream. So yeah, I'm sorry. So let me stick to this use case first. So at this point, this Bugzilla plugin 1.5 is exposed. So if we go access this guy, you'll see that it's serving the plugin metadata in the same format as the rest of the Jenkins plugin do. And to make it easier for those instances to consume this update center, we even expose a plugin that you can download, and then you can install it into those the instances in your side organization, and they'll automatically get configured to have this as a secondary update center. And or going back to the other use case, if you wanted to define the update center as a filter of another upstream instance, then we could, for example, define the Jenkins open source update center as the upstream, and then we can periodically make sure we can periodically fetch every new versions available from the external community update center, apply any filtering or the manual the promotion, demotion if necessary, and export it for the rest of the company to consume. So it's really convenient in places where you run multiple Jenkins instances.
So a question here is this meant to replace Nexus Artifactory, or do you see it as a supplement to those, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, in my mind, it's sort of a very different thing. That is, you use Nexus and Artifactory for the storing the binaries that your build has produced, whereas this update center is really just for hosting Jenkins plugins. So it's a very narrow subset of plugins. So I think they coexist quite nicely.
All right. Okay, so now that you've set up your update center, you've sort of done things right here. The next set of problems is, how do you respond to failures and how do you bounce back from failures? And we've all heard this. Your mom says this to you: back up your stuff, right? And usually, well, no, not my mom, but I presume, Kosuke, your mom, but I hope somebody's mom out there says back up your stuff, right? And there's a backup plugin. It's a fairly extensive plugin, and what we've done here is we are giving this backup to cloud part of this plugin, again, free through the CloudBees plugin gateway. And the idea is that you can back up jobs or build records back to CloudBees Dev at Cloud if you didn't want to set up your own instance. So if you're not backing up your instance, I would suggest downloading this plugin. Again, it's free, and using it. Now, on the Jenkins Enterprise side of things, you could actually back this up to a file system somewhere, and it has these notions of periodically backing stuff, and you choose what you need to back up. So the whole idea for us was to take away this checkbox, which is implicitly in everybody's mind, which is between now and later, you always push back up to later. And given that creating a backup is just as simple as creating a new job on Jenkins, we hope that decision becomes a now more than a later. Now,
if I can add a little bit there. So one of the things that we do well in this backup plugin of ours is that the backup is a new job type. So you can bring in the same, the scheduling capability, the notification capability of Jenkins plugins to the mix. So you can configure it to do full backup every week, and then just the job configuration every day, and things like that. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Right. So before I move on to the next slide, there are a couple of questions. So one is, what was the first plugin that we mentioned in the first or second slide? Jan, it was the folders plugin, and that's available as part of on the Jenkins Update Center. It's called under CloudBees Plugin Gateway. The next question from Adam is, how do you distribute templates and/or folders across different Jenkins instances?
Oh yeah, so I guess I forgot to mention, but those templates are also designed to be portable in that they have the GUID to uniquely identify the template across the entire universe. So you can define template in one place, and then you can go to the Jenkins home, and then there's a model folder that you can take the file, and then if you could just copy over that file into another instance. And then there's a reload template button that lets you reload the definition from the disk, and then voila, you have all these templates reflected to those instances right away. So that's currently how you can define a template in one place and then deploy them across your organizations.
And could you sort of move folders across Jenkins instances?
Just like you can move jobs across Jenkins instances, you can also move folders across Jenkins instances. Now, it's not as easy as we'd like it to be, but yeah, you can.
Sort of a offshoot on this is today's folder plugin does not allow you to move jobs from one folder to the other, and that came across as a feedback from our customers to us. And we're actually quite a way along implementing it, and we'll be releasing that feature fairly soon. So you should be able to take a job within one folder and move it to another folder. The next question is, can we back up to local or network drives instead of the cloud?
Yeah, so again, this is another place where we took the same ingredients in Jenkins studies, the extensibility, and they apply to what we do in the R value-add plugin. So this backup plugin is also extensible, and one of the pluggability points is where the backup would go. So we have the local directory support, we have SFTP support, I believe, and so you can, if you have an NFS-mounted folder, you can back things up there, or you can sort of SFTP stuff into another remote machine.
Right. So to clarify on the backup plugin, right, the backup plugin originally came in Jenkins Enterprise, and that has the feature to back up to the local or network drives. And then subsequently, we felt strongly about this, that we sort of implemented the backup to cloud as the extensibility point and gave that away for free. So backup to local or network drive is available as part of Jenkins Enterprise, but backup to cloud is available as part of the free CloudBees plugin gateway. All right. Another question. Wow. How can backups be restored? Is it possible to revert to previous job configurations?
So the restoring backup is basically the untarring the stuff and then restoring Jenkins from it. So we don't have any current nice UI or anything around selectively restoring, let's say, a particular job configuration. There's a different plugin in Jenkins that do that sort of stuff. So I guess the current best practice is probably use this in conjunction with those. So the backup plugin, I think, as it stands right now, is more for disaster recovery, not for reverting to earlier configurations.
Okay. As part of that, like, we are talking about versioning your config environment that sits on our Jenkins Enterprise roadmap, although it's not planned for an immediate deliverability, if I could pronounce that right. If you feel strongly about it, please shoot me an email at harpreet@cloudbees.com, and I'll work on getting that on our roadmap. All right, so the next really big feature that we are fairly excited about is high availability, which is, addressing this point that if things go wrong, how do you bounce back faster? And the way this is set up is there's a Jenkins cluster, and in the box in orange is the primary Jenkins master, and the teal box is a backup Jenkins master. And there is a monitoring tool that sits in this environment, and a reverse proxy is serving requests to the Jenkins master. This configuration is a typical one, but not necessarily the only one. And these Jenkins masters are sort of sharing their Jenkins home, and they're talking to each other over, I presume, JClouds. And if the primary Jenkins master goes down for whatever reason, or the machine goes down, the backup Jenkins master takes over, starts up, and starts serving requests for the Jenkins master. Now, the great deal here is all this happens automatically without an administrator ever having to do anything in here. So what typically used to happen is the master went down, somebody found this out, and the administrator had to come in and rescue things. This all is just automated, and now probably becomes a downtime of a few minutes for the master going down.
Right. So this is also, like Harpreet touched on, this is also just a typical way people deploy, and this is not the only way you can do it. So, for example, this monitoring tool that's written in here, they are not necessary to make the failover happen. They are running as a root to observe when the failover happens, so that sometimes you have operations that only root can do, like. For example, another way to deploy this is instead of using reverse proxy, you can do the IP aliasing. So you can define one floating IP address that always gets attached to the node that's running current active master. So swapping around the IP, those floating IP require root privilege. So that's the kind of thing this monitoring tool does. And we also made sure that one of the things people like about Jenkins is that the ease of use. So we made sure that this HA capability is very easy to use.
All right, let's have the demo then.
Yeah, so I guess what I was showing today thus far was actually all running on the highly available Jenkins, and then. It's not actually like you have to do anything. Just by starting Jenkins Enterprise like CloudBees, you automatically get this HA capability baked in. And all you have to do is to start 2 Jenkins instances that's pointing to the same Jenkins home, and then they automatically figure out each other and then take care of the failover behavior. So all you have to add around it is, like, for example, if you want a reverse proxy, that's something you have to do. Or if you want to define the IP aliasing, you probably have to get the IP address somewhere and then stuff like that. So you can see, come to the Manage Jenkins page and see the high availability status. So right now I'm running 2 Jenkins instances on this same node. So that's not exactly a great disaster recovery plan, but it's going to do for the purpose of the demo. So these are the 2 instances that's running. They are also running the same version. One is acting as the current master, the primary node, and then the other is the standby. So what we can do is, and then again, because we are running both on the same node, I'm running them on 2 separate ports. So if I go to the standby instance and access it directly, you see that it's currently acting as a standby. So what I can do is, so this is the primary node, so I can just type the Control-C to kill this instance. And then when we do that, the other guys take note of the fact that the other, the current active node went down, and then it starts automatic failover process. So now it's sort of picking up everything it needs. All the job configurations and the build records and so on are left intact. And then if you load the page, you should see that the other guys came back up and then start taking the workload. And then, if the, so that's basically what this HA capability does. It's an active standby mode, so that in case of a disaster hits, like I don't know, the JVM crashing or heap saturation or the disk out of space, stuff like that, and then the other node can quickly take over, and then all the user sees is like I guess a few seconds to a few minutes of the downtime.
So if somebody is not using NFS, and that's a question coming up here, what options do they have? So the other thing you can deploy this on is things like DRVD, which is a network replicated block device. So you can have, that's the another thing the monitoring tool can coordinate well. It's like, the DRVD require, when the switch failover happens, DRVD needs to be told that now the other guy is master. So you can do those coordinations. So those are, I think, the 2 configurations that we sort of endorse. But if you are even constrained below that, I mean, you can even deploy this, I'd imagine, on rsync, for example. If you are taking rsync periodically enough, so that, and you're willing to lose the data at the point of the failover happens. I mean, I guess you're willing to lose the data that's not synced yet when the failover happens. That you could do that as well. So I think there's a fair amount of flexibility here. Is there a manual switch required to fall back, which I guess you demoed here, but I think there's a question coming up.
Manual switch
to fall back from the primary to secondary.
So if you want to manually initiate a failover as opposed to Control-C, you can do it. I guess I glossed over the UI.
No, I guess the question is, there's no manual step required here, right? It's all automated. The fallback is automated.
Yeah. So the failover is automated, but most of the time, I'd imagine when people want to deploy this, I think they want either. I mean, I think your users want to see the same URL, and then so that needs some external setup going beyond the Jenkins enterprise, like the IP aliasing or the reverse proxy. So we have documentation that explains those steps, but but if this is what you just need, then yes.
So another question here is what happens to running builds?
So unfortunately those would be gone. So there's really no way for us to know exactly what point of the execution it is, and then so we are looking into that, but as it stands right now, the build that what's going on is going. It behaves as if they were aborted, let's just say.
Okay. So as Kosuke said, this is something that we are actually looking into in terms of addressing in further releases. There's one point I think that was not very apparent, that you can actually end up using this to do rolling upgrades for your Jenkins instance.
Right. Yeah. So right now in this demo we have the two instances running on the same version of Jenkins, but they don't have to be. And in fact, we also allow you to run this HA mode around arbitrary open source Jenkins instances or your custom built Jenkins image. So in those situations, you can have two nodes running slightly different versions, and then you can try the upgrade into a new version by failover, and then if the new version trips up completely, then you can quickly fall back to the original version. So those things are also helpful.
One comment here is they found Jenkins to be highly reliable. That's pretty nice, but they want the slaves to be more highly reliable than they are.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting, because the way the Jenkins addresses these slaves or their stability is to kind of assume that the slaves are unstable by nature, that they can come in and go. So we provide means like labels and things that allow jobs to operate in the presence of node failures. Like when you have, say, 3 dozen slaves lying around, the chances are pretty good that like one of them is always having some problems. So instead of trying to make individual slaves highly available, our approach is just like to bring a whole lot more of those, and then we just make sure that the job gets assigned to the available ones. So, yeah.
Cool. It's kind of expecting failures to happen rather than preventing them. All right, so moving on. I hope you like this feature. I was personally very, very stoked to see this. So now that you've sort of bounced back from failures, and I'm just doing a time check, we are 5 minutes away, although I think we have about 10 more minutes of the presentation remaining, so please hang on. So the next set of things that we've sort of built, the next thing actually is to make sure that user check-ins don't break the repository. And so we are trying to make sure that no batch check-ins actually end up into the repository and cause downtime for everybody in the team. And this feature is called validated merges feature.
Right. So I said earlier that the tools like Jenkins is all about productivity, so that you can delegate those mundane work to the servers or Jenkins, and then you can focus on things that matter. But when we currently look at how Jenkins is deployed, this hasn't always happened, or in fact, more often than not, when the organization starts deploying a continuous integration, there's more visibility into the current state of the tip of the repository. So often people get more extra cautious and then want to make sure that their commits that they push is not going to break the repository. So they often spend more time running tests. So it's great in some sense, but it's also a bit wasteful in the sense that we are failing to take advantage of the servers, which is more abundant. So that's the context, and then there's this emerging the practice of combining Jenkins with Gerrit, which is a code review tool, and then where you can use Jenkins as a code reviewer, one of the reviewers that checks your code. And then by running tests and making sure that it doesn't break anything. So we thought this was a great idea, but we also wanted to take the same approach so that you can use this thing even when the code review isn't involved. So if you're one of the primary developers of the project, then you might not necessarily need someone else to review the code, but you do want to make sure that the test will pass before that change lands into the repository, because otherwise it will break the build. So the idea here that we came up is in this validated merge feature, or the, I guess, more sexy word that somebody told me is the unbreakable builds. I guess the obvious.
I think we should rename it to unbreakable.
Yeah, the Oracle reference to the unbreakable Linux, which I thought was a bit silly. But anyway, so the idea is that we want the Jenkins to act as a gatekeeper. So the Jenkins is now acting as a Git repository, and you as a developer that's sitting in the left, when you get to the point in the code change where you're comfortable with the change, so you made all the changes you think you need to be made, you haven't run the test yet, so there's a chance that things are broken. But at that stage, instead of running everything locally, you just push the changes into Jenkins and then ask it to take over the process from then on. And once the change is pushed into Jenkins, it's going to notice that, and then it's going to pull the current tip of the branch from the upstream theme repository, do the build, run the test, or whatever else you configure it to do, and only after they are deemed good by the definition of good that you define. And then it's going to push those changes up into upstream. So that's why this is unbreakable in the sense that, the only time the push to the theme repository is going to happen is when the Jenkins has verified that it's successful. It's by definition, it's impossible. So to break the build. So to look at the same thing from another viewpoint, in fully general case, right? So let's say you're working on a branch, and then by the time you started working on this change locally, and then you get to the point that picture down below, that's what you have pushed. And at the same time, the other people in the team are working on the code, so you end up having the repository in general case progress a little bit. So what Jenkins is going to do is to take those two changes and then merge them, and then it's going to test this version. And then after that is successful, that's the one that gets pushed to the upstream, and then that becomes a new tip. So this is actually a very crucial distinction, that is that we are testing the result of the merge as opposed to the commit that you're pushing, because there is a chance that those merge will produce some interesting interactions and break the build. And then, so all that, the other benefit is that while all this is going on, the whole thing is asynchronous, right? So you can, based on the assumption that your changes are, most of the time, more often than not good, you can just keep on making progress without waiting for the whole lengthy process to kick in. And only when the Jenkins has failed, you get a notification in the way you like, and then that's the only time you have to come back to this earlier change and then rework the fix, rework the changes to fix the problems. And then, as long as your changes are all good, you're not going to get blocked by the time it takes to run the whole cycle. So, so we made the Git implementation inside the Jenkins server. Git server implemented inside Jenkins, and then it supports the HTTP transport and then SSH transport. And there's a bit of magic going on inside the Git server running inside Jenkins to make the experience a lot seamless. And we also expose these various tags for every changes that are getting pushed and then tested, so that if you want someone else in your team to help resolve the issue that you discovered, you can cooperate between multiple people. So let me just quickly show it to you. So here, as a demo, I have this local workspace of the component that I'm working on. And then even though it's a quote-unquote component, all I have is just a build script. And then that's going to, make or break the build. And then this is currently hooked up into the Git repository. So what I'm going to do is to copy this guy and then create the job to do this validated mode. So I'm going to do the foo project and the freestyle project. And this guy is going to check out from the Git repository. That's the URL. And all I run as the build is a build.sh. And then to support this validated merge, we have this, you check this enable Git validated merge support, and then that's all there is to it. So this can already be used as a continuous integration job. Like if you configure the repository polling or push notification, that can be used to constantly build the stuff. But because we enable this validated merge support, if you click that link, you see the instruction necessary to start using it. So in fact, what's needed here is to add Jenkins as another upstream repository. So I copy these instructions, go back to the workspace, and then paste this, and then execute that. So all I did was just added another upstream repository. So now I'm a developer, so I'm going to busily make change. Checking debugs, I don't know. Made some changes to the code, implemented a great new feature without knowing that this actually breaks the build. And so whereas I normally do, you're used to pushing changes to the origin. What I'm going to do here is to push the changes instead to Jenkins. And then it's going to authenticate. So I added SSH as the upstream, so it's going to authenticate against my key. So you're only allowed to push, obviously, if you have a permission to do it. And then while I was doing this talk, hopefully you noticed that it had go ahead and run the build, and then it failed. So if you look at the console history, you'll see that it has the changes that I added, and then it failed. So if I configure the notification, I got that. And if somebody wanted to work on this change, you can run these commands to obtain this tag that represents this fails commit and look into it. So noticing this change, I can rework this commit. I can fix it. I guess I could just delete that. And then maybe I can amend the commit if I wanted to, or I can just create a new commit, right? So I guess let me just amend this commit in this case, and then push that up to the Jenkins again. And then it's going to pick up this change again, and then it has started building it. And this time the build should succeed. So at the end of it, what's going to happen is the changes that get pushed goes up to the upstream repository. So at this point, if I do git fetch from the origin, which is the normal upstream repository, then you see that now the origin master is at the same point as I pushed, and it doesn't see any. At no point in time the origin master contained the commit that was broken, right? So it's the only time it gets updated is when the build is successful. So that's basically how it works.
Is this only for Git?
Yeah, so this is obviously very much tied to Git. Nothing prevents us from doing something similar against the other distributed version control system, but we think that the Git is where the action is.
This is where the future is, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So another question here. Where has the upstream repo been configured?
Okay. Yeah. So, remember I configured in this server to fetch the changes, so that's where this is configured. So if you look at here, so that's where we are pushing changes to.
Okay. Cool. Moving on, I think probably we are 5 minutes away from the end of the presentation. So just again, time check for people. So we've now talked about sort of the good management of Jenkins, right? And well, one part here that we'll quickly gloss over is once you've set all this up, you should really be setting up for making builds faster. And something that we've delivered as part of our latest Jenkins Enterprise releases is called a fast archiver. And what this does is it zips the delta of changes of archives from slaves to master. So
right. So yeah, so what this actually does is, when you're doing the periodic regular continuous builds, the binaries that you produce in one build and the binary that you produce in the next build is often very similar. So we take advantage of this similarity and only compute the delta between between those guys, and then use the arithmetic rolling checksum algorithm to drastically compress the amount of data we need to send in.
And so this, ends up making your builds much faster. Then there's this other section about sort of how do you provision slaves faster, and we have this VMware auto-scaling plugin there that you can create a cloud of slaves and give that to Jenkins.
Yeah, so this does a number of things, but for example, on a single host system, you can have a number of virtual machines that's configured to a particular test environment, and then you can let Jenkins power up and down those machines as necessary. You can also have Jenkins manage snapshots through this plugin, so that you can make sure that every time the test starts, it starts from this known snapshot that represents a clean state, and then as soon as the test is over, the virtual machine gets thrown away, and a new instance returns from the same snapshot to start over and over again. So that's the kind of thing we can do.
Cool. So now that you've configured Jenkins and you've been really good about it, it's good management. Let's look at what smart management is. Now, whatever we've talked about and the other big good practices around setting up Jenkins still leads you to this place that is you're sort of one step away from failure, right? Because you are managing Jenkins yourself, you're managing slaves yourself, and to just reinforce the point, this is you, right? You're just waiting for something to hit you. So why not just sort of use the promise, quote unquote, of the cloud and move things to the cloud? And this is where we at CloudBees have this product called Dev at Cloud, which is really Jenkins in the cloud, right? So you get all the advantages of the cloud, which is you're no longer managing machines, you're no longer provisioning masters, you're no longer provisioning slaves. The whole advantage is that you only pay for the feature, the time that you're using, and not sort of having this capital expenditure of estimating the number of machines you would need to support the number of teams within your organization and buy those upfront. So, moving to the cloud / CloudBees is a good option here. With CloudBees Dev at Cloud, you end up getting code repositories and Maven repositories if you optionally want to use them. And it's team-based, so you can put up your team up there and have access control set up. You get all the Jenkins Enterprise plugins that you've just seen so far available there as well. So just to bring up the Dev at Cloud page.
Okay, so I guess just to show you the elasticity and all that. So here's one hosted instance of Jenkins from the Sonar Source project. This is open source tool, and their workload is kind of like very typical of us, like ours, in the sense that when you need to run tests, you need to run against a lot of things, but when you're not needing to do it, you just don't need anything at all. So to simulate this bulky, spiky load, what we can do is to use this bulk builder to just schedule a whole bunch of stuff, in fact, every job in the system into the queue. So all of a sudden now we have a huge queue that indicates everything that needs to be built. So what Dev at Cloud does is noticing that there's a huge spike in the load, it starts to bring up additional slaves into the mix. So, even though the individual tenant's workload is spiky, we have a lot of tenants under Dev at Cloud, so the aggregated total resource consumption seen by us is not that spiky. So what we can do is pull those resources and then add stuff into the instance that currently need the computing power the most. So here, that's something interesting happened there. But I think we gathered up, as I was speaking, we already added up about how many here, 8 or 9 slaves, and then 5 of them already started building. So this will grow up to like 15 or 16 on this instance. And then as soon as the demand is gone, then those slaves will be deallocated and then go on elsewhere to help somebody else's workload. So this kind of elasticity, I think, is really nice and only possible with the cloud-like environment.
Yeah, so I mean, for me as a product management person, what is particularly exciting is the fact that I didn't have to invest in these machines here, and we're paying by the minute here. So so that's fairly interesting. And from a Jenkins user perspective, what I really like is the fact that the UI is just effectively Jenkins UI. So there's nothing new that you're actually learning. There's no new paradigm here to learn. One additional advantage here with this Dev at Cloud is we've worked with a number of partners. So we've had these number of add-on services that Kosuke is just trying to show right now. But let's say you wanted to have a Sonar or a Selenium instance set up for you in the cloud. What you typically do right now in your organization is set the server up, and there's additional management and workload that you actually end up owning, right? Same goes with something like Artifactory repositories So what we've done is we worked with these providers to provide a cloud version of these, and you can just one-click enable these and start using them right off the bat without ever having to manage or set these up yourself, or worrying about any of the availability parts of this kind of thing. And at the end of the month, you get one sort of bill, and you're not really chasing across various companies and consolidating those bills. So that's a huge benefit that you get as part of Debit Cloud. And what this whole setup, if you can go back to the slides, what this whole setup lets you do now is actually move from sort of the continuous integration model to a continuous deployment model, right? So as part of CloudBees, there is this Run at Cloud platform as a service, so you can actually take the artifacts that you've built and straight away deploy from within CloudBees Debit Cloud Jenkins instance to the Run at Cloud instance, and actually have your solution tested right there. So you can actually move your entire development to deployment cycle to the cloud, right? So that's a huge benefit here. So kind of coming to the end of this presentation, just a quick overview of the plugins that we have. They fall under these three buckets. We've touched upon most of these today and glossed over a couple of those. But from a personal excitement perspective, I think the high availability and the unbreakable build sort of / validated merges feature is very exciting, and templates is super exciting as well. So if there's one thing that you take away from here, is just go and download the free folders and backup plugin, and I think all you need is to register with CloudBees, but they are free for use from there on, and you can just improve your overall experience with Jenkins itself. So to wrap up, going back to that picture that you saw earlier, which is a day is a period of 24 hours misspent, we hope that with these kinds of plugins, this is how your 24 hours are misspent and not like the guy who's juggling things around. So with this, come to conclusion. I'll open up for Q&A because there were plenty of Q&A that we saw. So if you have questions, please feel free to shoot. So one is, would we be talking about the load balancer plugin? This is from Adam. Adam, we don't have a load balancer plugin. I do think you meant the high availability feature that we introduced, and that's sort of the plugin that we've built. Oh, so the question is the even load thing.
Yeah, so the even load balancer is actually the scheduling of the jobs among slaves. So historically, I guess we had the algorithm inside the open source Jenkins is that if you have one node that's configured with 4 executors, another node with 2 executors, then one with the 4 executor is twice as likely to get it. That is, in other words, every executor is just as likely to get the next job. But but often in practice, even on the system that has 4 concurrent execution capability, as we add more to it, it starts to suffer, right? So with the even load scheduler, what the Jenkins Enterprise is going to prefer is try to always prefer the node that doesn't have any workload at all, as opposed to be filling in more executors inside the single big box. So it just changes the way that runs. So it's not the same thing as the high available thing. So.
Is the fast archiving plugin meant to work with copy artifacts plugin or replace it?
So that's interesting. So the way this plugin works is that as soon as you install it, this archiving artifacts feature that you find in the core, it's silently replaced to this smart copying algorithm. So you actually don't have to do any configuration to use it. and then it's going to grab the binaries from these slaves. Now, the copy artifacts plugin, that's the other way around. That is, it copies the binary from the master to the slave. And then so maybe there's some room to apply the same change over there, but at the same time, it's actually a bit tricky because in those environments, the slaves doesn't necessarily have to have the binary. So yeah, I have to think about that. But that's actually interesting. Maybe something we can add to the next version.
Okay. Is there an item for better scalability, multiple Jenkins instance, and load sharing on the roadmap for Jenkins Enterprise? So Norman, in terms of better scalability, we will continue to plug away at the high availability feature. There are a number of items that we've already identified for the next release, so that's one we'll do. In terms of multiple Jenkins instance, there's sort of a backstory here that we actually had we had made with a beta of a product